Welcome, listeners. It's that time again. Time for art, time for crimes, time for arts and crimes. I'm your guest, temporary co-host, Josh Boyles.
And I'm Brandon.
And I'm Kelly.
Where are they?
Well, we're recording for the first time from the new pod lab, which is the guest room.
Just to set the stage, there are twinkly lights, mood lights, that are the only form of illumination, and Brandon and I are sharing a bed. So, I expect candles next time, and rose petals.
I want you to know that I almost did have a candle brought in, because I was like, oh, it'll smell so nice, but I left it in the bathroom. So, sorry about that.
It's probably more useful in there.
Yeah. So, anyway, how was your guys' week? Welcome back again. La la la.
So earlier this week, and by earlier this week I mean yesterday, I saw Brandon and I was like, "Hey Brandon, what's going on?" And he's like, "I can't tell you. I'm saving it for the pod." That's what happened. My week was this recursive thing where the only interesting thing was me asking Brandon what was going on and him going, "I won't tell you." So I'm really excited to hear this, Brandon. Let's jump right to you.
All right. Okay, so
He's switching back to caramel.
I tried it. I'm done. No, still committed. It's actually it's been quite easy to keep my commitment because I hardly ever talk about that candy substance.
What's it called again?
Caramel.
Caramel.
There it is.
That's right.
I also said caramel wrong. I said caramel. I can't even say it wrong right.
So, yeah, no. So, the thing that I decided to share is that very recently a new video game came out, Elden Ring Night Rain. So it's...
Which we've talked about Elden Ring before.
Yeah, we have talked about Elden Ring before, but so this one, it uses the Elden Ring engine. But it's a very different game in that so you have pre-built characters first of all, which is different, and then you party up with 3 other people, and then you get dropped onto an island all Fortnite style by these
From a bus?
not
in
from
the sky?
It's not from a bus. It is in the sky, but it's hawks.
Hawks?
Yeah, these big
Lord
spirit
of the
hawks.
Rings eagles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you just are running around with this limited amount of time because there is a ring that shrinks down on you to try and collect equipment and level up from killing enemies. And it takes about 15 minutes. In 15 minutes, the ring has fully shrunk down to where you are just in this small little arena and you fight a boss. And that's day 1. And then the ring expands back out and you can hit some of the things that you've missed before. There's new...
So are you all working together against a main boss?
Yes.
Or are you working against other players?
No, it's cooperative.
Oh, I like that. That's precious.
Yeah.
It really is very much like Fortnite, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, other than that there's not the PvP
Aspect.
aspect
But
or
like
whatever.
the big ring dropping down.
Yeah, like it's very weird, and mainly got the game because Lincoln was hyped for it, and there was a learning curve, and I definitely will say there was a point where I was like, "This game is stupid," but got past that, where I figured out the game and I understand what we're doing, and it's pretty fun. So you do. The ring condenses once. That's the first night. It condenses again, and you fight a new boss, and that's the second night. And then you immediately go to the Night Lord, which is the biggest boss. And so there's like 8 different Night Lords. And it's kind of fun also that it brings back a lot of stuff from all of the Souls games. So there's enemies and bosses that are from old Souls games. So there's a little bit of nostalgia there.
Oh.
So, it's not it's turned out to not be a bad purchase, and I am enjoying the game, and that's what I've mainly been playing when I do take time away to play.
Nice.
Fun.
That explains why we haven't played in like a week.
Yes.
So really, we need to do, instead of the arts and crimes reviews of movie, we need to review a video game next time.
We should.
We could.
We should, because
We could do art about crime. We could do like Grand Theft Auto.
That's true. That's true. I feel like
Or if
video
I
games
did-
would be a real easy one to do because it's literally art, immersive art. So,
Yeah.
and Elden Ring, so much art.
You have an art book?
I do, and I love
About
the
Elden
art
Ring.
in it. It's so crazy. I was like, man, I love this art, and then I was looking at it, and I was like, I think there's something wrong with me. They're all like skulls. There's this lady that's like got hands grafted on hands, and I was like, yeah, it's the good
That's your
stuff.
kind of thing. Anytime you look at a painting, you're like, not enough hands.
Not enough hands. Not enough hands grafted onto hands, man.
Yeah.
You bore me. I've seen arms before.
Yeah.
Caravaggio. Give me a little spice. How was your week? Now that
No,
you know
you
about
go ahead.
Oh.
I told my week
His
thing.
week was
Was
just
waiting.
being disappointed that I wouldn't tell him about my week.
Oh no, I forgot to silence my phone.
Oh.
That's a rookie mistake.
So, anyways, I basically what I did for my last couple weeks is completely rearranging my entire house, because the guest room / art room is where the pod is now. So it's the depending on what I'm doing. It's like how your garage is a garage or a shop, depending on what you're doing in it, Bran.
Yeah.
So if there's guests, it's the guest room. If we're recording the pod, it's the pod lab. If I'm doing art, it's the studio. So I moved all of those into one room now. And but I had to switch my bedroom into the smaller bedroom, my like sleeping quarters. But it actually worked fine.
The sleeping quarters.
Yeah, I don't know why I felt like it had to be said that way. But I did. I was like, all of the furniture I had to switch, like switching out 2 beds, all this stuff. And I got up, it was like 10 when I finally started. Or 7. Actually, it was 7 a.m. And I was like, I'm a strong, independent woman. I can do this on my own. And I did. I switched everything on my own until I was about to go crazy. And I had to text you, Josh, on how to switch the bed because I couldn't get it out of the room. And you're like, oh, you have to take it apart. So then I took it apart and I switched them. And I did that all in one day from 7 to 10 p.m., 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. I was
It's a long
moving
day.
furniture.
That is a long day.
Yeah. And then I've been like cleaning and reorganizing since. So there we go.
Yeah.
That's what I've been up to.
Well, when you told me we went shopping and you told me that you'd swapped, and I was just like, why didn't I get a call? You moved all this furniture on your own. I'm like, I'm such a sexist.
No, you're a good brother. That was not the sexist thing.
There you go.
I was watching something. Oh yeah, I was doing research for this episode that we're going to talk about, and they were like, he was put in charge. I'm going to tell you about this guy here in a second. He was put in charge of archaeology of this site in 1908. I was like, wasn't that long ago? It's like barely 100 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me something impressive.
Well, I'm gonna.
Okay.
With this episode, because we're talking about King Arthur this week, and this is the Ashwini warning. It's a 2-parter. So
Oh no! Stop listening right now
yeah,
and
turn back, Ashwini.
wait for the next part.
But I promise it's only 2 parts this time. It will not be 4 parts.
Right. You've already finished.
Yeah, I
All the
finished.
research.
I know that it's not, 16 pages and then some. So we're good. So we're going to talk about King Arthur here and his story, but we're going to start first with kind of how impactful it's been, in that there was and always have been a absolute love of this story since medieval times. It's like 6th century is when King Arthur, that's his time period of which he may or may not have actually lived. We're going to discuss that in part 2. But there was an archaeologist. This is the one I was talking about that started in 1908. Frederick Bligh Bond So his name was Bond. Bly Bond.
What wouldn't it be Bond? Frederick Bond?
Well, he didn't go by Frederick. He went by Bly Bond.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Wait, Bly was his middle name?
Yeah, so technically Bly was his middle name, but that's what he went by, is Bly Bond.
Okay.
That just doesn't sound... Bond. Bye, Blonde.
Blah, blah.
I see you have come to play Mr. Bond. Blah, blah.
That was the original name, and then they're like, change it to James.
Yeah. It's too hard
Yeah.
for someone
the
with
villains.
a Austrian accent to say.
Yeah. So anyways, he became a really successful archaeologist, and he really became obsessed with the idea of finding King Arthur's tomb. And some people were like, it's because he really needed to make a name for himself, and other people were like, I don't know, because he was obsessed with it. Like, the ulterior motives were not on his radar as much as he just was obsessed with the idea of finding King Arthur's tomb. So he,
It's such an interesting thing to obsess over.
right? But, I mean, it was 1908, so what else you got going on, I guess?
When did they discover King Tut?
I don't remember.
Sorry. King Toot?
I believe you meant.
Yes.
Yeah.
I meant King Toot.
1922.
1922.
Yeah, they had nothing going until 1922. They were like, archaeology? Haven't heard of her.
And then Toot came around.
And it blew up.
Yeah. No, but I was wondering, like, was there other stuff going on that motivated him? Or maybe he just loved the story itself? Like, maybe it was a personal motivation as opposed to, like, kind of an extrinsic thing?
It sounded, based on what I was reading, that it was a personal thing, that he just loved the stories and he wanted to find them. Archaeology was a fairly new science at this time. So he's one of the earlier archaeologists of the time. And part of why he's noteworthy is he did some things that ruffled some feathers.
Oh.
So he decided that he wanted to find King Arthur's tomb, and he started poring over these accounts that had been written about. So there was some monks in 1191 that had said that they actually found the tomb of King Arthur, that they had dug up 2 skeletons. And one of them was like really tall. They were like, he must have been 7 feet tall when he was alive. And he had multiple wounds, but the only one that didn't show any healing was one on his head. And they're like, that's what the tale is of King Arthur's death. So it's probably him. And buried next to him was a female skeleton, and they knew it was a female because she still had long black hair clinging to it. And in the account, the monk says that he was so taken up by the romantic idea of it that he reached down and grabbed some of the black hair and it turned to dust in his fingers. And not that I am already starting to refute things, but I don't think that's how hair works.
It doesn't typically turn to dust?
In your fingers. Wouldn't, you know what I mean? But what do I know?
I mean,
I've never had to pick up.
About romance.
I don't know about that either.
That's the most romantic part, is when the hair turns to dust.
You've read all the novels.
Yeah. Okay, I want to ask this question. We can like cut this later or whatever, and you guys can think about it. If you were to be obsessed with any archaeological find from the past, any time, like, what would you be obsessed with?
can finding the Stargate be mine?
They could be, I suppose.
Why not?
I would say it couldn't be fictional.
Silly.
Might as well do Atlantis if we're doing fictional.
So I want to find something from the past.
Yeah, is there
Atlantis.
anything from the past that you're like, oh, this would be so interesting?
I mean, now that you say it, probably Atlantis or like Bigfoot.
That's not an archaeological find. That's a cryptozoological find.
Okay. Then, I mean, like, Atlantis has always been very fascinating to me. But also, like, the Ark of the Covenant. Come on, Indiana Jones.
Yeah, that would be pretty good. The
that would
Ark
be
of the
cool.
Covenant is a cool one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brandon's really stuck on Stargate.
No, I just can't really think of anything that's old that's interesting.
Well, stick around.
We got the podcast for you, man. The second time in a row that we're like, you know what would be great is if we could do something Brandon doesn't like. That he just, not that he hates it, he just doesn't find it interesting.
I actually have a whole list of things that Brandon has throughout his life told me he's uninterested in. And that's what I pull my pod episode ideas from.
Taking copious notes. This is all a long con to just waste Brandon's time in the cruelest way possible.
Ever.
Yep.
And then we're going to get to the end and she's like, I didn't even post them. I wasn't recording.
It's just a red light. It's not even a microphone. Yes. No, I am recording. It's a real pod, and I don't have a list of things you hate. I'm sorry. I do have a list of things that I'm planning on maybe getting you for your birthday.
Oh, dang.
Because your birthday's coming up.
It's true. Is that a safe thing to share with the internet?
I didn't say what day.
Don't say what day.
Okay.
But internet. Wish Brandon a happy birthday.
In some undetermined amount of time from now. Less than a year, but more than a day.
Yeah. We just narrowed it down. They know it's not today. Or is it?
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun.
I guess it depends on when you post this.
Good point.
That's true. Okay. Anyways. Monks. Found it. Romantic. Hair
Yeah.
to dust.
So the monks said in 1132 or whatever.
1191.
1191. We found the thing because it was super romantic and he had a skull.
But there was
wound.
one other thing in there.
Head injury. Matchy.
Head injury, matchy.
Tall man.
Uh-huh. But there was one other thing in there. And there was a lead cross. And on it said, "Here lies buried the renowned King Arthur with Guinevere, his second wife, in the Isle of Avalon."
I mean, that does
That seems-
kind of set the story.
That would be an extremely elaborate prank.
So that's that's kind of the jumping off point that Blybond takes. Blybond, that he wants to, find, and it's so in this account the monks unbury the bodies and they wrap them up and they take them to the abbey there, and it's where is it?
Downton Abbey.
No,
Crossover episode.
Glastonbury.
Glastonbury.
Yeah, so it's
Glastonbury Abbey.
It's in Glastonbury Abbey, and there's the church at the abbey, and that's where they re-entomb him with Guinevere. And it's they say in their account that he's buried in the center of the church in the most prominent area with a big slab of black marble over it, so that everybody can worship the renowned King Arthur.
Sure.
Worship him?
Or give...
Pay their respects.
Yeah, that's it. Worship isn't right, but
Or just walk all over him.
Revere.
That's the word. So he asks for permission to go and do reconnaissance? Diggy, findy.
Yeah.
To dig up the grave.
He wants to...
He wants to
go
dig
looking?
up the site. Yeah.
Be a rebirthing man.
Yeah, something.
So he wants to go to where the bones are now.
Yes. So he wants to go to Glastonbury Abbey, and he wants to find the missing Abbey church, because at Glastonbury there's only walls from the Abbey portion of the Abbey, but the church is missing. They don't know where it's at.
I feel like it
They
has
lost
to
the
be
whole building?
somewhere within the walls.
What do you think? Well, it's like the Abbey has multiple buildings, and so they have the walls from one building, but not the church.
Okay.
So it's just like at the Alamo. There's actually the church at the Alamo, which is separate from the barracks and the chapel and all this other stuff. So there's actually multiple buildings at the Alamo, which I didn't know. So apparently that's pretty common at abbeys.
For places to have multiple buildings? Yeah, that makes sense.
But
We've cracked the code.
We did. I should get a prize.
Is Glasgow a city?
Yeah, Glasgow is. Yeah.
Right. So
But the Glastonbury Abbey has
Glastonbury.
multiple buildings within the abbey.
Did you just think I was asking a random, like,
Just as-
is this place a city,
Is
Kelly?
London a real city?
London. I don't know about London.
Okay.
London.
Glastonbury is a city.
Glastonbury Abbey
Glastonbury.
in
Glastonbury.
You keep putting the abbey at the end of it.
yes,
So
because
is
that's
it
the name
only
of
an
it.
abbey, or is it a city that has an
Called
abbey in it?
Glastonbury.
Um,
Or is the name of the city of Glastonbury, Glastonbury Abbey City?
it's a town in England,
Okay.
Glastonbury is.
Glastonbury.
Or Glastonbury Abbey.
And it had
and
an abbey.
Glastonbury Abbey is in
An abbey.
Glastonbury.
Right.
In the town
okay.
of Glastonbury.
And the abbey has walls.
With-
The
Within the
abbey
abbey.
has some walls because it's mostly fallen now.
The Abbey.
And the building is missing.
And the church of the abbey is missing.
But the church of the Abbey wouldn't necessarily be inside the Abbey walls.
Correct.
See, that's the part that...
It wouldn't?
No.
So it's more...
So think of it as like the abbey is like the compound.
Like a big estate.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the church of the abbey is the church on the compound.
But wouldn't the... If
would
there's
be within the
walls
compound.
around the
Yeah.
compound, then
So
you
it
would
would be
say,
on the
look
Abbey.
inside this part.
Yeah.
Yeah, but specifically it said that it's inside the church of the abbey.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which would be inside the walls of the compound of the Abbey.
Yes. But
listen.
it's not the walls of the compound because there isn't technically walls around the compound. There are walls up from other buildings within the compound.
Okay. So the Abbey, the compound, does not have an outer wall.
Correct.
There are other building walls.
Yes.
Like maybe there was an outhouse.
Yes.
And there's some walls from an outhouse.
This is the fanciest outhouse, but yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
right.
We follow you.
We got it.
Yeah.
In the
He
church.
was in Glasgow.
in Glastonbury. in England is a
In
town.
foggy
England.
London town.
Yeah. So the big problem is he asked for permission to dig there, and they were like, why? And he was like, I have a theory that King Arthur is there. And they were like, we'll think on it. And he was not the type of guy to just like sit idly by. So
Sit idly by.
zing bang say.
You nailed it. And the part right there. We've made
We'll do the
the
rest in
joke.
part 2.
We can't top that.
And so he, through poring over the accounts and looking at the structures that were there, he sort of tried to draw out and figure out what the abbey would look like. And he used, do you know what the magic square is in math?
I've heard the term, but I can only think of like...
Does it have to do with the Fibonacci sequence?
No.
Oh, then I don't know.
No. I'm only having visions of like Captain Kangaroo in my head.
Well, so I didn't really know, to be fair, I didn't really know what the magic square was either. But that's where you have like rows and columns, and they like each row has to equal the same, and then each column has to equal the same. So it's a little bit like Sudoku, where you're like, I have to get 1 through 9 in one row and a column of a square. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I guess.
Yeah. And so he was trying to use the information that he had from the walls that were standing and figure out sort of this. I don't know why he used a magic square or why, none of the math makes sense to me, but
Because
I'm not a math
that's what
person.
archaeology was back then. They were just like, I bet it's the magic square. It's the golden ratio.
So is he just saying, I have some walls that are up and I bet they made a square? I'll look inside that.
So what his idea was that if he could figure out what like square ratio that the buildings were built on, they had this idea that all church buildings of the time were built under that same pattern.
Mm-hmm.
So he
Was this idea correct?
weirdly it was.
Okay.
So basically each row, he did math for a long time. He mathed it up for a long time and figured out that each row and each column could equal 111. And then he times that by 8 for reasons, again, I'm not sure. That equaled 888. And then that turned into like a 72-foot square block. And so he knew that the structure was built within this 72-foot square block system. And then he could develop that with using that system. He could kind of create the architectural blueprint of where he thought all the rest of the church stuff would be at. And he used some other systems too, but I'll tell you about those in a second because it'll make more sense in a second. So that they finally, like, with all of his, he was like, look at this stuff I have that confirms that I should be looking. They were like, all right, so you can go and dig. And then he walked over and he's like, based on my calculations, there should be a wall right here. And they were like, okay. And they dug, and there was. And they were like, dang, son.
Magic square.
So he dug and, like, found the, like, missing church. And with, like, extreme accuracy. And everyone was like, it's like he knows how to get to this stuff magically. And he's like, and just kept digging and did his thing. And so then he finds what he believes is the center of the church and starts digging there to find the tomb of King Arthur. And as he's digging, he finds chunks of black marble.
Man, this guy's onto something.
Yeah. And so he's like, dang, there's going to be skeletons here any minute. I've done it. I found King Arthur. And he keeps digging and no bones. Nothing. There's no metal cross that says, here they are. Nothing. And then he's like, oh yeah. There was King Henry, like the 8th, came and destroyed this tomb. I forgot about that. Because I think that he, and I'll discuss this a little bit more in part 2, but I think that he came and destroyed it because he didn't want people, like, rallying behind the idea of Arthur, like, even at that time. And so he destroyed the tomb. So he was like, they probably moved the bones after the tomb was defiled.
When you're defiling a tomb, I feel like you don't worry about moving the bones.
Yeah. Who is he thinking moved the bones?
Well, and that he was thinking it was like the monks or the people that at the monastery, because the tomb was destroyed and they didn't want to leave the bones irreverently in this destroyed thing or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with Josh on this one that if you don't want people rallying behind it, you need to destroy those bones. Like, not give them something else to just move somewhere else.
Yeah. Well, the Blybond was like, I believe they're moved elsewhere. And so he asked the church if he could move somewhere else. And they were like, where are you going to move? And he was like, you know what? I know this for a fact. There's an even older church underneath this abbey. And they had a cemetery. And I bet he was moved to that cemetery. And they were like, okay. And so he started digging and he found the cemetery.
Was this like old New York?
Or like old New York under New York.
Yeah.
Or like how there's a town literally underneath the town in Edinburgh, isn't it?
I don't know. You're telling me something new.
Oh, yeah. Like
In Mexico City.
No.
It's built on top of a different town.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
I think that's how it is in Edinburgh, too. There's a town. I'll have to double check, but I'm pretty sure there's a town.
I imagine a lot of places are built on other places.
Yeah. Or the catacombs underneath Paris.
Yeah. Because that's where they used to live, was in the catacombs.
Yeah.
It's not.
That's not true.
It is true. You heard it here first. I'm doing Victorian era archaeology right here, which is where I sit here and say the catacombs were where the mole people lived.
And you can't disprove it.
How do you say mole people in French, Brandon?
I don't know how to say mole.
Well, back to the study.
Yeah. Continue.
Okay, anyways, so he starts digging up and he's doing really well. And he's like at the height of his archaeological fame. So he decides to publish a book on how he's doing all of this. And
Before finding?
He
He jinxed himself so hard.
Oh, yeah.
It's called I'm About to Dig Up Arthur, Trust Me, Guys, the book.
That's almost, that would probably be better than what he published.
Oh, dang.
Because what he published was that the manner with which he was really doing all of this was through paranormal activity.
Oh, boy.
And the church
Magic
didn't love that.
Man. The church was not a fan of that. So basically what he said, what he was doing was called automatic writing. Have you heard of
Yes,
that?
Yeah.
I've heard of that.
So, you both have. That's amazing.
I mean, you should probably explain it to
it.
the readers, the listeners.
No, we know. Continue.
If the
one
two of
time-
us dummies know, everybody knows.
Okay, well, we'll explain it just in case. So automatic writing is you're basically like trying to tap into the like subconscious part of your mind that can communicate with like the spirits. And you will get like a piece of paper and you'll just have like a question or an intention in mind. And then you'll just let yourself write the answer because you're communicating with these other spirits and they're giving you answers and that kind of stuff.
Or aliens.
Or aliens. That's also, yeah, whomever. And so he specifically was trying to speak to the monks that had found the bodies originally. He was very...
I was giving him too much credit for his archaeological prowess. He was really Scooby-Dooing this one.
He really was. So what he said in his book is that he did contact the monks, and one of them, who was named Jeremias, told him specifically where to look, like where the church was, that it was in the, like all this stuff. And Jeremias is the one that told him there is a church underneath the other church and that there is a graveyard attached to it. And so he published this and the church was like, "You done. Like, you're not allowed to dig anymore. You have to go." And he was like, What? I'm so surprised.
And they were like, "Only we can talk to Jeremiah." We didn't know he was talking to you, that whore.
Two-timing. So yeah,
Two-timing monk.
So he was kicked off and he was not allowed to dig anymore.
Oh no.
But that is not where the search for King Arthur's bones stops. It doesn't die with Bly Bond. Because during this time there was another archaeologist who had seen
Named Blofeld.
What?
Blofeld?
Blofeld.
Oh, no. Is that a real person?
Mr. Bond.
No.
Isn't Blofeld the bad guy in the Bond movies?
He probably
What
is in one of
movie?
them. Which one? I don't know which one.
In The One.
Dear listeners, Josh has just melted onto the floor.
He's still going.
I'm doing great.
So there's another archaeologist. At the time, he was only 8, so he wasn't an archaeologist yet. But he was Arthur Raleigh Radford. So he had another first name.
His name was R. I should talk into the microphone. Because that was a real good joke that everyone's going to want to hear. His name was R.
You gotta get higher, Josh. I like that you've taken the mic from Brandon entirely.
His name was R.
When things like this happen, you are so loud.
It's true.
It's great because I can see the size
The
of the waveform, and it's like normal, and it's like,
Sorry, anyway, Arthur Randall Rugsfield.
yeah, or Arthur Raleigh Radford.
So what just happened was Josh rattled off that name, and you heard me say "whoa" because I was like, I was about to say "whoa." You remembered everything she said, and then you came back with a totally different name.
I got Arthur. I remembered Arthur.
Yeah, which is good because that's the main character's name of this episode. Anyways, so Arthur Raleigh Radford, who was 8 during Blybond's work, he follows up and he kind of takes over the mantle for Blybond, but in an entirely different way. So when Arthur Raleigh Radford, so when Radford is an archaeologist, he's like, I'd like to do something crazy. I'd like to only base my archaeological findings on facts. And I would like to only find things via facts. I don't want to do any paranormal. I don't want to do anything like that. And they were like, wild. We're a fan. And the church is like, maybe we'll back you instead. And so he's like, cool. Can I dig where Bond was digging? And they're like...
Listen, I only like facts, but I got a really good feeling about this ghost.
And the church was like, no, you cannot. He was like, that's okay. Again, I'm a big fan of facts. So if this isn't where he died, I'll go to where he was born instead. Because if he was born, it's got to be a real place if he was really born in real life. So in the stories...
I feel like there typically aren't big markers of where people are born.
Except for like royalty or famous people.
Sort of.
I guess.
I still feel like...
Wait, do we know King Arthur's lineage?
We do. Yeah, we do. And I'm going to tell it to you in a second.
Ooh.
But we know for a fact that he was born in, or at least we know for a, like what we're told.
We know
legend
for
says.
a theory.
Yeah, we know for a theory that he was born in Tintagel. Or it's spelled, some say it Tintagel.
Tintin.
Some say it some other way. Anyways.
Tintagel.
Tintagel, yeah, that's the other way that some people say it. And that's supposedly where King Arthur was born. But the views of the archaeologists of the time was that that's not possible because the island of Tintagel had no ruins of any kind, and they had found no ruins of any kind. So they're like, King Arthur couldn't have been born there because you're saying that there was like a castle and a town there, but we have found nothing. And Radford is like, I have a crazy, crazy plan for finding it. I'm just going
to cut out the middleman and talk to King Arthur's ghost.
Yeah. Why didn't Bond do that? But no, he's like, I'm just going to dig deeper than you dug. And they're like, you're a crazy man. But do whatever you want.
But they were like, you can dig there because there's nothing there.
Because there's nothing there. We don't care. So he got permission to dig there, and he started digging, and he found the remains of a 6th century monastery. And
That's the right century.
That's the right century. And as he continued to dig, guess what he found? Not King Arthur's bones.
A sign that says, welcome to Tintagel, where the birthplace of Arthur.
on a lead
On
cross.
a lead cross.
None of those things.
Dang it.
They found what is archaeologically one of the most valuable things you can find. That's a hint. Do you know?
A big piece of gold.
A Rosetta Stone.
No! Pottery!
That's not that bad. Gold is way more valuable than pottery.
If you're a prospector, if you're an archaeologist, you want pottery. That is how, like...
Listen, I don't know how many archaeologists you know.
You shut your
but
mouth.
they would happily take a 200-pound block of gold over some friggin' pots.
They can't, because when they found that in King Tut's tomb, they didn't get to keep it. They had to give it back to the people.
Well, he was digging on Tintagel. Nobody was going to know that he found a 200.
He was like, well, just
anyway,
maybe...
I'm sorry. Okay, so he found the most glorious thing of all, pottery.
It's legitimately one of the best. Like when archaeologists are looking for civilizations, they search for pottery because it's something that not only will last, so it's for sure there, broken or not, but it also denotes a sophisticated civilization because you have to have like kilns and that kind of stuff, or there is trade because you can track where pottery is from because different clay bodies and different glaze types and different fire techniques come from different cultures.
I love that it denotes advanced civilizations. I love the idea of 1,000 years from now, archaeologists are digging something up and they dig up like a Nintendo 64 and they go,
like,
this is
no,
Put it in that garbage. It's not a pot. This is a garbage civilization.
Yep.
Because when you come to think of it, the only pots in my house are the ones you've made for me.
And they'll know that you were civilized.
Yeah, they'll be like, this guy's way ahead of his time. Look at all these pots.
Yeah, exactly. But they found pottery, and it was pottery that was not native, like this. It wasn't made from native soil, so they know that not only was it civilized, but it was like a trade place. Mm-hmm. So it really was a well-used like port and location. And he was like, son, we found it. We found the birthplace of King Arthur. And that is where we're going to go back in time to learn about the life of the man we just found the birthplace of. We're going to start again in the 6th century, and this is in England. Do you guys know the name of King Arthur's dad?
Arthur Sr.
Close. Uther Pendragon.
Oh,
there it
yeah.
is. Yeah.
I knew the
Now
Pendragon.
you say that name, I
Yeah, Uther Pendragon, which
I love that it's Arthur. Like he had a speech impediment, and they're like, "What do you want to name your son, Uther?" He's like, "Arthur." And they're like, "Arthur, it is." No,
I didn't want that.
I wanted to be Uther Jr.
Also, I didn't really make this connection before because I don't know why. I just didn't bother. But I realized that the fake name that Howl in Howl's Moving Castle is Pendragon. Which I was like, oh, that's where it comes from. So, you guys, just as a heads up.
Okay.
For starters, very few times I want to give Disney props, but they get props at one point. You'll get it. But also, this is a Wilden story that is like not at all. There's so much to it that I did not think was part of it. So just be ready to have your mind blown. Maybe not less, so that it is exciting. Anyways, so Uther Pendragon, he is kind of at war with the Duke in the area. And so he sends for the Duke of Cornwall, because that's the Duke he's warring with, to like come and talk to him. And so the Duke and his wife, Igraine, show up, and Uther sees Igraine and is like, whoa.
Look at that cake.
She hot. Daddy like. And and so he talks to Duke Cornwall, and I don't know what it's about, but the Duke and his wife leave. And Uther is like, I cannot get this girl out of my head. So he re-invites the Duke to come, but he's like, but bring your wife. And he's like, no, I'm not gonna. And Uther's like, that's it, war. And so he decides to go to war with the Duke. And so the Duke is like, I gotta keep my wife safe. So I'm going to furnish 2 castles. One is Tintagel, and that is where my wife is going to stay. And then I'm going to go to my other castle, and I'm going to furnish that, and I'm going to hang out there, and that's going to be my main base of operations for the war. So the Duke goes to the other castle and leaves the wife at home. And Uther is like, I gotta see Igraine. I'm literally falling ill because I can't be with her. And his knight, Ulfius, is like, I gotta find a medic. I gotta find somebody. I know, I'll find a wizard. And that'll help fix it for you, because I don't know how to fix it for you. And so he goes out and he comes across Merlin. And he tells... he sees Merlin. Actually, what he sees is a beggar in disguise. And he meets Uther, and Uther's like, the king needs help. And this beggar's like, I can help you. And then he shows up to...
and he agrees to this. The beggar is like, I can help. And he's like, great, you're the man.
Yeah, he's like...
Come here and check out the king, beggar.
Yeah, he's like, this is my first rodeo. Always trust a beggar in these stories. And so he brings the beggar to Uther. And as soon as he shows up to Uther, Merlin's like, no quests, spring, I'm a magic guy. And Uther's like, fantastic, I'm in love with this lady, and I just gotta have her. I'm sick from it. And Merlin's like, okay, I can solve this problem for you, but you have to do something for Merlin. He's gotta wet his beak a little, you know? And so Merlin's like, I can get you with Igraine, but if you do, you're going to conceive a son, and I want you to give me that son. And Uther is like, totally fine. Yeah.
He's like, I don't know if you know much about guys, but I wasn't interested in the child anyway.
Yeah.
There's only one thing I want out of this transaction.
And I'm getting it. So what Merlin does, while the war is raging on, Merlin transforms Uther to look exactly like the Duke of Cornwall and sends him to Tintagel to go be with Igraine. So Uther shows up looking exactly like the Duke and is like, hello, wife. And she's like, ah, yay. And they go and have intimate moments. And then Uther leaves. And like the very next day, messengers show up. And they're like, by the way, like a month ago, your husband died in war.
I thought the husband was going to show up. And she was going to be like, that was something last night. You're pulling out some new moves. And he's like, what are you talking about? And then it would all unravel.
Nope. It doesn't unravel how you think it's gonna. So she's like, oh no, who did I sleep with?
I had sex with a zombie.
With his ghost. I knew there was a ghost involved.
She didn't think either of those. She was like,
Oh, what?
Who was it? Because I guess people transforming into other people.
Was it a baker?
Yeah, maybe. And so she's like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. And so I was just reading my notes. This is what my notes said. Duke of Cornwall equals gone. Disguise Uther as Duke. Uther goes to Igraine as if he's Duke. Bada bing, bada boom, he sleeps with her. That's my notes. Okay. So then they find out that the Duke of Cornwall is dead, and she's like, oh no, what am I supposed to do? Because I'm pregnant. And then Uther is like, I have a really great idea. Like he comes to her as Uther and is like, you should marry me. And she's like, okay, I can do that.
The idea was, give this baby to this wizard I know.
Well, that'll come next. And so she is getting ready to marry him. And right before she marries him, she's like, by the way, I slept with some random guy and I don't know who he is and I'm pregnant. And Uther is like, don't worry, it was me. And she's like, whew, that was close because now I'm marrying you, so it's fine. And so then there's a big festival where they get married, and then a whole bunch of other people also get married. Like end of war marriage thing. I don't know what it was, but a bunch of people got married. And from a lot of those relationships, a lot of the famous knights that we talk about later, or that is in the stories of King Arthur, come from relationships that were forged that night. So, little time goes by, and she has the baby. And Merlin shows up, and he's like, give me that baby. And he takes it. And like they don't get to name it or anything. So Merlin just takes it, and he's like, I'm going to take this baby, and I'm going to take it to this knight, Sir Ector, and I'm going to give it to Sir Ector to raise. And I'm going to name him Arthur. Which I thought was so funny because I was like, he didn't want to raise it himself, but he didn't want Uther to raise it either. So he gives it to this other knight, Sir Ector, that he knows to be a good man so that he can raise Arthur on his own. And Sir Ector has his own son already, whose name is Kay, who eventually becomes Sir Kay. Sir Ector is raising Arthur as his own son. He doesn't tell Arthur that he's not his own son. Kay doesn't tell Arthur nobody tells him that he's not Ector's biological son. And so he raises him. So, time goes by and Uther falls ill. And Merlin, who is now Uther's trusted advisor and wingman, advises the king to go onto the battlefield, even if it's on a stretcher, to win this war. Because it's kind of like constantly either wars or like jousting events. And that's sort of what's going on constantly. And so he does as Arthur says, and he goes on the field on like a horse-drawn stretcher. Mm-hmm. And the men are like, yay, we're great. Inspired, that's the word.
How can we lose with this guy on a stretcher on our side?
And they vanquish their foes. And so the king feels better, and he's like, we should have a victory party. And so he goes to London, and he participates in the festivities, and then falls ill again. And this time Merlin's like, I can't help you on this one. It's God's will. And so before Uther dies, he's like, by the way, I named your son Arthur. Do you want him to be king? And Uther's like, yes, I do. And he's like, beautiful. And then Uther dies. And so Merlin's like, everybody hear that? Did you hear that? Arthur's going to be king. But people weren't crazy excited about the idea of a kid being king. And so Merlin tells the Archbishop of Canterbury to gather all the lords of the kingdom by Christmas. And he wants them there by Christmas because he says, by way of a Jesus-style miracle, we're going to know who the king is. And so all of the lords show up, and in the churchyard is a big stone with a sword stuck in it. And encircling the stone were gold letters that says, whoever pulls the sword from the stone is the rightful king. So a bunch of the lords try to pull it out. Nobody can pull it out. And then the archbishop is like, I literally just told you the kid is not here that's supposed to be king, and that's why nobody can pull it out. And they're like, it's ridiculous. So anyways, because Arthur is a young boy by this time. So New Year's comes, and they're having like a big tourney, like a big tournament, and there's jousting and all that kind of stuff. And Sir Ector is there with his son Sir Kay, who is participating. And Sir Kay forgets his sword and is like, Arthur, go get my sword. And Arthur's like, my brother can't not have a sword. So he takes off running, and then he sees the sword in the churchyard. And he's like, I'll just grab that one. So he goes and he pulls the sword out from the stone, and he brings the sword to Kay. And Kay recognizes the sword immediately and goes, Dad, I'm the next king. And so his dad is like, what? And brings him to the church and takes him in the church. And he's like, now that we're in the church, you swear to me that you pulled this sword from the stone. And he's like, I can't lie in a church. I didn't do it. Arthur gave me the sword. And so Sir Ector is like, did you pull the sword from the stone? And the kid was like, yeah, I did. It was easy. And so he's like, I don't believe you. So he sticks the sword back in the stone and tries to pull it out himself. Sir Ector does. And he can't get it out. So then he's like, Arthur, pull it out. And he's like, okay. And he pulls the sword, no problem. And so then he's like, I got a few things to tell you, Arthur. You're adopted. And like, basically explains that he was given to him by the wizard and that he's the true king, and the fact that he pulled the sword is why. And Arthur is like, that's nuts. I'm really sad you're not my dad. He's like, yeah, but since you're the king, can you make, all I want is for you to make Kay a steward of the country. And Arthur's like, sure, I can do that. And then they go and tell everybody, like the archbishop and stuff, and they're like, hey, Arthur pulled the sword from the stone. He's the next true king. And the archbishop is like, whoa, that's neat. And then all the other lords were like, we don't like that. Put it back. And so they put the sword back and all try to pull it out. And then they have Arthur pull it out. And this happens various times. He has to like stick the sword back in and pull it back out multiple times before the commoners are like, he's our king. He's our king. And they're like, fine. And so they let him be king. And so he decides that he's going to throw a big party to celebrate that he's the new king. And the like kings from all over come to celebrate, but they're not really celebrating. They're plotting against him because they don't like that he's supposed to be king.
This is where we're giving Disney props because it's just like Duke Weselton.
No, we're giving Disney props because the sword in the stone has Sir Kay, and he forgot his sword.
But Duke Weselton was plotting against Elsa.
That's
in
true.
Frozen.
That's
just like the Arthur bad guys.
the Arthur bad guys.
It's all connected.
You're so right. So anyways, all these lords come, and then but they're all really skeptical of this idea of the boy ruling. And so Arthur is talking to his advisors, and his advisors are like, we think maybe there's some skullduggery at foot, and so maybe bring some extra guys. So they bring 500 extra men to the stronghold to defend Arthur in case. And then it worked out because the lords, all the other kings attack. And so they're like fighting for 2 weeks, just all of them in there fighting until.
So what was the the Britain or whatever wasn't one kingdom, right?
Yeah, it was separated.
So Arthur wasn't like King of the Britons, and
No.
then everybody. It was all these different groups, right?
Yeah, like they all were king. There's so many kings, just like kings on kings on kings. And so there's a bunch of kings here, and he works with kings and he fights with kings and allies with different kings and unites England. And that's part of why like he's sort of renowned, because he is this sort of unifying force. But we don't really get to that today. So after 2 weeks of this like constant fighting going, Merlin shows up and he goes and speaks to the kings, and he's like, look, this is the son of Uther and Igraine. He's legit. He's supposed to be the king. And he predicted to them that he was going to be king of the realms for a very, very long time. And some of them laughed, and there was some like back and forth, but eventually they were won over by Merlin. So they agree to stop fighting. So then Merlin's like, beautiful, let me go talk to Arthur. So then Merlin goes to Arthur and is like, okay, bud, I spoke to them. They're ready to accept you. And Arthur is like, fantastic. So he goes down, and Arthur walks in with his knights to talk to the archbishop and the other kings. And he's like, I will friggin' fight all of you. And like starts the fight over again because he's like super mad at them. And the kings are like, that's it. They start attacking again. And so Arthur has to retreat back into his tower. And so Merlin chastises the other kings for getting mad, because he was like, you won't ever beat Arthur anyways, so don't get mad. And they're like, whatever, this is outrageous. And then Merlin disappears again and reappears to Arthur and is like, all right, go and fight him, but don't draw your sword until the very last moment. And Arthur's like, okay, I can do that. But then as soon as Merlin says that, King Lot breaks through the line and approaches Arthur and kills the horse that Arthur is sitting on. And Arthur is like, not my horse! And he pulls this is where the timeline is not quite right, and I can't fix it. It's just, this is what it said. And he's like, not my horse! And he pulls out Excalibur, which he had not gotten yet. Because Excalibur is not the sword that's in the stone.
Mm-hmm.
But this
Really?
is... Yeah, it's not. It's a different one.
He gets that from the Lady in the Lake.
Yeah. Excalibur.
He has two magical swords.
Well, he has the King's Sword and then Excalibur, which is magical. But at this moment, I think storytelling-wise, it was convenient for him to have a magic sword. Because it says that he pulled Excalibur and a bright light blinded his enemies, and then he killed a bunch of them because of the light that blinded them. So, I don't know, because it takes a little bit for him to get Excalibur after this. But
Just like in King Arthur, the Legend of the Sword. That's the Guy Ritchie King Arthur, which was not super successful, but I freaking love it.
I really like the King Arthur with... Is that the one?
Charlie Hunnam.
Yeah, Charlie Hunnam.
Yeah.
I really, really like that one.
It's so fantastic.
It's so good. The music is fantastic. It's definitely a different type of cinematography.
But yes, when you said he pulled out his sword, that's what I picture is from the movie. Mm-hmm. It's like a Super Saiyan sword or something.
Yeah.
He moves around at lightning speed and kills people.
Yeah, basically. Whenever I say the sword's name, though, I think of Excalibur from the Soul Eater anime. And it's like this little duck-billed thing that's wearing like he's like 2 feet tall and has like a top hat. And he's like, Excalibur, Excalibur.
Isn't there a like 1980s or something cartoon? Excalibur, be my strength. What is that?
King Arthur and the Knights of Justice.
Oh. What was that other one with the football team? Is that
King
them?
Arthur and the Knights of Justice.
It's the same one.
It's outrageous.
Yes, you guys were talking about your favorites, and I was going to
Bring it up. Let's hear about it.
Yeah.
My favorite retelling of the classic story, King Arthur, is from the 90s.
Is it really?
Yeah, when a football team of high schoolers drives through a magic tunnel, crashes their school bus, which is being driven by one of the students.
As one does.
And
The 90s was so wild.
They get transported into the age of King Arthur and stuff. Something's happened. King Arthur is whisked away or whatever. The knights are away, and the land is in peril from the enemies of whatever, and they take on the role of King Arthur and his knights.
So the quarterback is King Arthur.
Yes, the quarterback, of course, is King Arthur.
Obviously.
What's amazing in the plot holes is Guinevere is like, "Oh, you're King Arthur now, okay," and
she's into him.
yeah.
When you hear the rest of the story, you'll be like, "That fits.
Yeah,
That fits."
She was a real...
They have
hua.
That's King Arthur. That's the hua.
amazing transitions into their armor, all magical and stuff.
Like Sailor Moon.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
But for male football players.
Same thing.
I'm picturing now a bunch of like football guys
like,
transitioning into tiny skirts and stuff. Kawaii.
I would love that. So now he is king and more or less accepted. So at this point, he starts kind of gathering knights and making allegiances and getting vassals. And it's for a while in the book, because I used the main, it's like by Sir Thomas Mallory. He writes kind of the most inclusive compendium of Arthur information. And so that's what I based most of this off of. But he talks about, there's like this whole section where he's like, and he got allegiance from this guy and this many vassals. And it's very like biblical, like Sam begot John and like begat, yeah. Like all, it's just very much like that. It was super boring. But then you get past that and you just know that also there's constantly like wars, jousting tournaments, melees, like they're constantly happening because these knights are constantly having to like show each other their prowess. So, so there's that. Yeah, and they need like a place to gather to talk about their noble feats. So, you know, boys will be boys. Just kidding.
Yeah.
Also, there are a lot of verses or chapters or sections or whatever about horses getting killed. Like the importance of people having horses is insane because it talks about them getting like stolen and people are killing other people so that they can take that person's horse so they can rehorse themselves or rehorse a friend. And so like literally Arthur rides into battle so that he can capture a horse to give to his friend so his friend has a horse. And nobody recognized Arthur on the field because he was so covered in blood, but he was like, I gotta get this horse. So it was like this big thing. And the opposing king, King Lot, if you remember, who's the one that like first got through the lines to attack Arthur before, during this war, one of these wars that they're in, he comes up with a plan. And his plan is, don't worry about the horses anymore. Just fight through it. Because they spend so much time, like a knight gets his horse killed, and so everybody's like scrambling to go get a horse for this knight to get him back up on the horse so that he can go back out again. King Lot is like, don't worry about the horses, but he loses anyways. And so this lady Leonore arrives to pay homage to King Arthur for winning so valiantly. And he sees her and he immediately falls in love with her. And he's like, you're my lady. And so they get together and they have a kid. And they name him Bor or Bore. It's Borre. However you say that.
They should have kept going with Arthur more and more. Uther. Arthur. Arthur.
And then at the end it really is.
And he's the descendant. It's all coming together.
But it's Bor. Who would later become a Knight of the Round Table. But
That's
then
nepotism for you.
yeah, it really is. But it's once again wartime, so he's like, "You're great, but I'm leaving you, lady wife," and she's never heard from again. And so he goes over because it's there. This time it's a war between King Leo de Grance or Leo de Grance. I don't know how to say it. Leo de Grance and his ally, King Riance. So naturally Arthur arrives to participate. So Arthur brings with him King Ban and King Bors. They go to Cameliard and they plan to rescue Leo de Grance. And this is where Arthur meets Guinevere. And he sees Guinevere and he's like, I'm in love with you. You're my lady. And immediately falls in love with her. And in my notes, the next line says, that dog. Like, he just moved right on to Guinevere. But the boys that are there with them are like, Arthur, we can handle this. You have other stuff you need to deal with at home. Go deal with stuff at home. And Arthur's like, I'll come back for you, Guinevere. And he leaves because he's got stuff to do. Also, Merlin foretells that all 11 kings are going to die in a day at the hands of two knights, which is Balin the Savage and his brother Balin.
Not Savage.
No, just Balin and
Regular Balin and Savage Balin.
Yeah. One of them might be said Balin. So Balin and Balin. I read them as Balin and Balin, but when I was listening to the audiobook, he said Balin and Balin.
Are they spelled different?
Yeah. Balin and Balan.
Just so you know, I didn't process that.
One is IN at the end and the other one is AN at the end.
Oh, Balin and Balan.
Yeah. There it is.
Which one was Savage?
IN.
Okay.
And really, like, there's so many shenanigans that have to do with those two. They come up quite a bit. And they're brothers, and they have such a sad end. So, don't get your hopes up for them. It's sad. Sad McGee.
It truly is sad that someone named Balin the Savage couldn't have a nice, just like, right off into the sunset.
Yeah, no.
End to
so
a story.
he, like, Merlin talks to King Arthur about how these two are going to be really great knights that do great things. And they do a lot of great things, which they're like Arthur adjacent, like they're off kind of doing their own thing. But the two of them are doing things separately frequently, and one of them goes to a castle, and I think it doesn't really matter. One of them has two swords and a shield that are like how he's recognized. And he goes to this castle.
Also, he's got 3 arms.
Just 2.
Then why have 2 swords and a shield?
I don't know. Backup sword?
Maybe sometimes you want to dual wield your swords, and sometimes you're like, this guy, I need some defense.
Yeah. But, I mean, it would have been helpful here in a second. I'm going to tell you how it would have been helpful for Arthur to have 2 swords. But they...
Arthur did have 2 swords.
Not at the same time. This guy had them at the same time. So he goes to this castle, and kitchen guy or scullery boy. I don't know what they're called. A page?
Sure. I mean, it could be.
Maybe. Anyways.
Is that someone who works in the kitchen? Because no.
Page is like somebody that helps the knights?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's who I'm looking for.
Or a squire, perhaps.
A squire. Maybe it was a squire. That feels like the right word. Anyways, the squire was like, your shield is damaged. Let me trade you so you can have this better shield, and I'll repair your shield while you go do this next thing. And Balin is like, okay. So then he leaves in his full regalia, but he has a different shield. And he shows up, and there's this other knight there, and he's like, I gotta fight this knight. And this knight is like, I gotta fight you. And so they start fighting, and they wound each other mortally. And they have to get off their horses, and it's hand to hand. And then eventually their helmets get knocked off, and they recognize that they're fighting each other. The brothers are fighting each other.
Oh, no.
They've mortally wounded each other. And one of them is like, I saw your 2 swords, but it wasn't your shield, so I thought it wasn't you. I should have just double checked. And the other guy was like, maybe. And, and then they die. Yeah. They kill each other. So it's a downer. But that happens a lot. There's a lot of that in these kind of stories. But anyways, I digress. So King Arthur leaves and he rides to Carleon. Buckle up because it's going to get steamy here.
Oh, man.
Real quick.
Listen, don't spare any details. We want it so explicit that this gets delisted. Go.
So he goes there and he meets Queen Margways, the wife of King Lot, who, remember, is his enemy. And he also meets King Lot's sons because I guess Margways is like, look at my sons. And it's Gawain, Gaheris, Agravain, and Gareth. Which I recognize Gawain as one of the Knights of the Round Table. So eventually that gets worked out, I'm sure. But what really catches his eye, if you can guess, is the Queen.
Her breast.
It's the Queen, yes.
No.
The Queen. And he's like, girl, I'm in love with you. And so he sleeps with her. What he doesn't know is that she is his half-sister.
Oh.
She is the daughter of his mother, Igraine. So, gross.
It's getting a little edible.
Well,
yeah, a little edible.
They're royals.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. It's
so,
already too late for them.
Yeah, but she conceives a son, and that son's name is Mordred. Do you recognize that name? I recognized it.
He's a bad guy.
Bad guy. And anyways, so he lies with Margways or Margaze, or however you say her name. And then he leaves because that's typically what he does, as he falls in love and then leaves.
It's the go-to move.
I think he doesn't understand what love is. But
What
he's
is
still
love?
very young.
Baby, don't hurt me.
Don't hurt me.
No more.
Okay.
So through various steps, it's so convoluted. He has like a whole dream sequence at this point. But through various steps, he comes across Merlin. But Merlin is disguised as a young boy. And he's like, as a young boy, Merlin's like, I know things about you, Arthur. And he's like, you're 12. What do you know? And he's like, I know your dad's Uther. And I know your mom's Igraine. And he's like, I don't even know that. You shouldn't know that. And he dismisses the kid. And then Merlin leaves and comes back up, like shows back up as an 80-year-old man. And Arthur like confides in him. And he's like, old man, you're so wise. I need help. I'm lost in thought. And then Merlin reveals himself. He's like, I was a 14-year-old kid too. You should have listened to me. And I would have told you so much more if you just listened to me. And Arthur's like, I'm so sorry. I'm really bad at this. Merlin's like, also, I have other news for you. God is really unhappy that you slept with your sister. And she also is conceived a child. And Arthur's like, whoopsie doodles. And so Merlin tells him that the child will be the downfall of his kingdom.
Merlin is all over the place.
He really is. He really is. But like, Merlin do Merlin, I guess.
I don't understand. Like, I was thinking, I feel like mythology fables are what has led us to be just the worst communicators. Like, you always, Merlin, if he just walked up to Arthur and been like, hey, it's me, Merlin, let's talk. I got some things to say. But instead he shows up as a 14-year-old. Why would Arthur listen to a 14-year-old? So, I feel like, I know this is a bit of a stretch, but like people are bad communicators and they're always like, well, I want you to figure out what I want to say, blah, 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 Maybe if our fables were full of people who just told each other what they wanted to say instead of showing up as a child and going, oh, if you can't tell why I'm mad, I'm not going to tell you.
If you don't trust me as a 14-year-old boy, I don't know why you're not trusting me as an 80-year-old.
If you can't handle me at my 14, you don't deserve me at my
80.
Well, so it doesn't make for an interesting story, right? Like, if there's no communication errors, what else?
I feel like there's interesting things that can happen. I mean, he's literally like dealing in a realm of magic. things could happen and still communicate.
Merlin has not done very much magical cool stuff. He's like, I can be a 14-year-old boy.
Or a beggar.
Or a beggar. Or an 80-year-old man.
Or dress Uther up as the Duke of Cornwall.
Who is Merlin? He's like, God's not happy you slept with your half-sister, but I did help your father fornicate with a married woman. God was cool with that one.
I double-checked before. It's in the fine print. I don't know. And so far, like, there's not really any real explanation about Merlin.
So one of the worst movies of all time that I've ever seen is Master of Disguise, starring Dana Carvey.
And that's Merlin.
So bad. And that is literally all Merlin is. He's the worst movie ever.
Well, I mean, he does some good things sometimes. It's like good adjacent, I guess.
Sure.
Because after this, we finally get Excalibur. So all this goes on, but Merlin still doesn't like abandon King Arthur.
He doesn't seem like he's really helping King Arthur all that much either, though.
No, but he's an advisor, I guess. I don't know. It's one of those toxic relationships. Can't say no. It's like that Eminem song with Rihanna. He loves the way he lies.
Going back to King Arthur and the Knights of Justice.
Yes.
Here's something I would love to point out is when you go to Wikipedia, it has the episodes, and then season 1, there's only 2 seasons. A grand total of like 23 episodes. Season 1, it has detailed rundowns of what happens in the episode up until episode number 8. And then after that, they just give the title. Like, someone was going through this Wikipedia. There's some poor Wikipedia editor was going through here in the middle of the night and went, no one cares what happens after episode 8. And they just stopped doing it. So, like, season 2, you don't know how any of these episodes go. There's no description at all.
They're like, it's an episode.
Like, he should have just deleted the first one so that it wouldn't seem so weird. Anyway, I apologize.
All right, listeners. What we need is someone to watch those episodes and then update Wikipedia.
We'll check in next time.
Yeah. That would be amazing.
The crime army or whatever we call our listeners. Did we ever decide on something?
I can't.
No, I don't think we did.
I don't think we have.
I think they're supposed to name themselves.
Probably we should call them the Handsome Geniuses. Come on, Handsome Geniuses. Pull through for us.
Make it happen. All right. So Arthur tells him about the downfall of his kingdom, but doesn't abandon him. So in another one of these like jousting events, Arthur is at his court, and in sort of like a Godfather-esque way, he's there granting people like wishes and stuff. Like they come and they ask for favors, and King Arthur's like,
You come to me as family.
Yeah.
I'm making my offer, they can't refuse.
That was really good.
That was a good one. Yeah.
So what happens is like poor peasants are coming up.
That is the adaptation of King Arthur we need. There's all these stupid adaptations. No one has done the God King Arthur father.
Please call it that too. The God King Arthur father. So like peasants and people are coming and they're like, hey, can we be made knights? Can my son be a knight? All this stuff. And so that's
all it takes to be a knight?
Well, in some cases, yeah. And Merlin's sitting there with Arthur and he's like, yeah, no, he's not going to be a good one. No, yes. So this young squire, and his name, I added this almost entirely for the name. And I was like, I want to start calling Griff this because the squire's name is Grifflet.
Oh.
So cute. And anyways, this young squire Grifflet asks to be made a knight. And Arthur's like, Merlin? And Merlin's like, he's actually going to be really great eventually. And so Arthur's like, okay, you're a knight. And so Grifflet leaves so excited that he's a knight that he challenges the first knight that he comes across, which is this knight that's like resting by a tree. And so Grifflet comes up and like smacks his shield and he's like, fight me. And the knight is like, you're a little child. I will hurt you. And he's like, no, I'm a knight. Fight me. And the knight's like, okay. And they joust and he almost kills Grifflet. Like Grifflet is wounded severely. And the knight is like, I should probably not let him die. So he picks him up and he puts him on his horse and he takes him back to the castle and they heal him. And he does become a great knight.
I wish he had died and Arthur been like, Merlin! He's like, I don't know. You don't get it all the time, okay? Sometimes the ghosts aren't talking to me.
That's who Bond should have talked to. Merlin.
Yeah.
That only would have gone well.
There's so many people
That he could have. But he sort of talked to Jebediah. Jeremias. Friggin' Jeremias. What did he ever do for anybody? He was just a monk.
He was probably the guy that grabbed the hair.
Yeah.
He probably was.
He was a bad archaeologist. You don't grab. That's archaeology 101. Yeah. Don't grab the hair because it turns to dust. They tell you that on your very first day.
First day archaeology school.
They say, listen, if you ever see hair, just leave it be.
It'll be dust.
Yeah.
So after that...
She's just desperately trying to push through to the end.
We're so
and
close.
I'm like riffing on this stupid hair thing.
So after that...
Listen, it's archaeology school day 1. First chapter, open your books to page 1. Hair rules. Don't touch it if it's Guinevere. It'll turn to dust in your hand.
Don't touch it if it's Guinevere. Oh, man.
Rule number 2. We're going to teach you guys about the magic square. Okay, listen, it's not a real thing. You tell people about it, but really, we're just going to be listening for ghosts, okay? That's the second rule of archaeology. It's all about the ghosts.
If you jumble the words up, it's just ghost talking.
Yeah. All right, I'll stop. So you can finish.
Okay, so anyways, after Grifflet nearly dies...
You're good.
This is why you're here. Arthur decides that he's going to go out and chill for a minute. And he sees a knight just sitting in a chair. And so he's like, I gotta challenge this knight. And
because it went so well for Grifflet.
Yeah, it went really well for Grifflet. And it's gonna go about as well for Arthur. So he's like, let's joust. And the knight's like, okay. And so they get upon, they go and do a joust. And Arthur gets knocked off of his horse. And Arthur is pissed. And he's like, that's it! And he's threatens the knight. And so he like jumps at him. And they start sword fighting. And the knight breaks Arthur's sword in half. And Arthur's like, prepare to be tuzzed. Just kidding. He's like, that is outrageous! And he goes and he just like starts like bare fist brawling with this knight. And the knight is super close to killing him, and he tells Arthur to surrender or he's gonna die, and Arthur's like, no! And so he goes out in full force. And so Merlin shows up, and Merlin is like, don't kill your enemy, to this knight that is fighting Arthur, because both knights have their helmets on so nobody knows who anybody is. And the knight is like, get out of the way, guy. And so Merlin enchants him into a slumber, so he falls asleep. And Arthur is like, how dare you kill him? And Merlin's like, chill, I only put him to sleep. And also, like Scooby-Doo pulls off his helmet and he's like, it's this knight, Pellerin or whatever. Let me make sure that's his name. Oh, Pellinor. It's the knight Pellinor, who is...
That name is stored in the stone as well.
Is it?
Yeah.
I couldn't remember.
Pellinor. It's the guy with the bushy mustache that he swishes back and forth.
Oh, that's right.
He rides in and Sir Ector's like, Pellinor! And like smacks him on the back.
That's right. Well, he's an amazing knight. And he almost killed Arthur. And Arthur had met him previously. So once the mask was taken off, he was like, oh, dog, that's Pellinor. So Arthur's like, I'm just gonna leave. So he leaves he's like, I'm gonna go find a hermit to cure my wounds. And I was like, that's an interesting choice.
Hermits, that's what they're known for.
That's what they do. That's probably why Uther had a beggar come and his like first man was like, I'll bring this beggar to heal your wounds. And then Merlin is like, all right, Arthur, come with me and we're going to get you a new sword. I know a guy. And so after Arthur is healed, Merlin takes Arthur to a very clear lake. That is what it's described as. So I don't know if other lakes were just not as clear or this was remarkably clear. It doesn't have a location listed. It just says a very clear lake. But sticking out of the lake is a silk-clad arm holding a sword. So it's just sticking up out of the lake is an arm holding a sword. And a lady that Merlin calls Lady of the Lake shows up. And Merlin turns to Arthur and is like, be on your best behavior because we want this sword.
Don't sleep with this one, Arthur.
Yeah, exactly. And so the Lady of the Lake says she would give the sword to Arthur if he promises to give her whatever gift she asks for when she asks for it. And Arthur, just like his father,
is assuming she means, the gift of his virtue.
Yeah. And he's like, yeah, sure. I'll give you whatever. Just give me the sword. And she's like, okay. And so she allows Arthur to row out to the arm and he gets the sword and the scabbard.
So is the lady and the arm separate entities?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. The lady is just like in charge of the lake, I guess. And so she allows him to get on a boat and into the lake and rows out and he takes the sword and the scabbard. And Arthur is like, I don't really like this scabbard. The sword is way cooler. And Merlin's like, take the scabbard. And if you're going to keep only one of these two things, keep the scabbard, not the sword. Because whomever holds on to this scabbard will never die. No matter how many times you're cut, no matter what, you will not bleed to death. You cannot die if you have this scabbard. And he's like, this is going to come in handy someday. And so he takes the scabbard and he takes the sword and then leaves. And that is where we're going to end today. With him finally becoming sort of equipped with who we know. He's the king, he's got knights, and he's got his sword.
Very nice.
Next time we'll talk a little bit more about his downfall and then what happens with King Arthur afterwards. Because
after his downfall?
Yeah, like after the story's all done, because his impact in history is like, not only is it still ongoing, but it's wild some of the things that people did because of this legend of who he was.
What's funny is, like, this is, I assume, like, fairly easy to, like, if you want to, you could find out all of the stuff that you've shared with us today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But Arthur is usually depicted as a virtuous man, right? Like,
yeah. Which I was confused by as well. But I think that comes later because they set up like a code and they set up rules and all this other kind of stuff. And I think once he gets Guinevere, he probably like settles down a little bit. So maybe this is his haughty youth.
He's sowing his oats.
Yeah.
His wild oats.
Yeah.
Yes.
So maybe that comes later. But this first half, he's pretty rambunctious and hot-headed.
I guess we all deserve to like, have our, the follies of our youths kind of overshadowed by what we do in our later life.
Anyways, tune in next week. Tune in next week. No,
Tune in 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah, just when the next time we post something, and it'll be the exciting conclusion to this 2-parter. That's for sure, just 2 parts for sure, and that's it.
You jinxed us.
I did. I didn't. Anyways,
It's still only gonna be 3 parts now.
Anyways, thanks again for stopping by, and we'll see you later. Go do some art. Don't do any crime.
Goodbye.
Bye.
The physical comedy is strong.
Yeah, it's too bad you guys can't see what we're looking at. Yeah.
Media.
leapfrog
So you just
style.
applied some duct tape.
Yep.
And got to work.
I did, yeah.
Don't include that.